So I want to say pleasant, good afternoon again to everyone and welcome to our session. Absolutely excited and happy that we were able to begin our conversation this afternoon with a song by the great Nina Simone talking about for a woman, identity, talking about who she is as a woman. And so it's important as we continue this conversation. Last week, our conversation was about sense of belonging. And today we are going into an introduction to anti-Black racism. Going to be a quick, we also have guests in the house. I want to say welcome to our guests. I know there's a whole bunch of students listen to us from a school out there. So I want to say thank you. I think I see your teacher in the room logged in. I think I saw that. So I want to say welcome, welcome, welcome. We also have community with us. And it's a beautiful, and I'm going to do this more and more. This is something I plan to do more and more. Cynthia, thank you. Cynthia is a teacher, Cynthia Mbetio. Thank you, Cynthia. And life is funny, and I want to put this for the record. And I did a course that Cynthia was the instructor, and we just connected. So from one amazing teacher, that's me, to a next. Welcome, Cynthia. Welcome to our class. And this is something, Cynthia, that I plan to do actually more in the future. I want to make sure I have a plan next school year how I want to intentionally invite community in the educational space. I get goosebumps thinking about it. We also have a community person with us and educators with us as well, but it's also a community. Jacqueline, welcome, welcome, welcome to our space, Jacqueline. But it's something I want to do intentionally starting next semester. So this is maybe the first I'm doing it, and I want to do it intentionally. I want to start having conversations where I invite community in, but just like Jacqueline is just listening today, or Cynthia and our students are just listening today, I want to be more intentional come September where they'll participate, because I think it's important as educators, as persons who are also learning, to keep in touch with the voice of the community in these conversations. All right, so welcome students, welcome, welcome, welcome. My name, of course, is Dr. Andrew B. Campbell, Dr. ABC. I teach in the Masters of Teaching program at University of Toronto, OISE, and also at Queen's. This particular class you're in is a course that we're teaching here at the University of Toronto, Mississauga. And I must tell you, I enjoy this course. This course is coming to an end. Salma, all of you get to know I miss you already, and I mean it. I already said to the program coordinator that it doesn't matter what happened with my career or how busy I get, I would continue teaching this course. So that's a good thing, because I do have a privilege where I could turn down courses every now and then, but I want to continue because you have been amazing. So let's get right into our conversation today. And today we want to have this conversation about introduction to racism, anti-Black racism, from awareness to action. I've done this presentation many a times. The good thing about my presentation is that it never is the same any two times to any two audience. Absolutely not. And so I want us to have this conversation, about what it means. In the first thing, particularly, I want everybody to take a look at the diagram on the board, or the graphic I'm using, and about us becoming anti-racist. Why are we learning this? Why are we learning this? Why are we here? Why is Cynthia with her class? Why are community persons sharing? Why are we in this course? It is more than to get an A. Yes, we're going to get an A and an A+, whatever our grade is going to be, we're going to get it. But it's about how do we all grow in becoming more intentional, whether we are racialized Black folks like myself, to equip ourselves to resist and to fight and to affirm, because that is something I'm realizing more and more. There is a needing to affirm Black students. There's a big gap there that I think needs to happen, and I want to start speaking to parents. I'm going to go on a accepting nothing but opportunities to speak. Once there's a parent group or a PTA or whatever they want to call parent groups, and they want me, I'm going to be showing up, because I want to talk to parents about making sure to understand that inclusion begins at home. I want them to understand that as parents, it's our job to affirm our children, whether they are Black, they are racialized, hijab wearing, indigenous. I want them to understand the power in affirming who we are. But back to this graphic. I want you to realize that this graphic is intentional because we're in a class where it's about growing and learning. It's about growing and learning. And where are you? So you're listening as a student. You don't know much about anti-Black racism. You may not know much about racism, but you are a part of a society that is filled with issues of systematic racism. Let's make this clear. Let's make this clear. And so I want you to situate yourself, your positionality, ask yourself, who am I? How do I see issues of racism? How do I relate to people who are different from me? What actions am I taking to be more aware? What actions am I taking to act as an ally? We have this thing where people love to call themselves ally. Stop calling yourself an ally. Allow somebody to call you an ally. Stop calling yourself an ally. Allow somebody to call you an ally. Because an ally is not a label. We love to slap a label on, like we slap a Prada or a Gucci or a Coach. I love Coach, by the way. Or you slap, a Zara or Asus or whatever. We're not talking about that. We're talking about being intentional about your actions. So as we talk about being aware and getting to awareness, one of the things I want to talk about as we get this conversation today is, how are we thinking about our power, our privilege, and our influence? If you're listening to me and you're not racialized, you are not Black, you are not racialized, you are dominant, you are white, I want you to understand, it is not a curse word when people say white privilege. Some of us have gotten this idea that white privilege is a curse word. It is not. It is a real term. There is a real term. And that is why I know I don't know why I'm going there so quick, but when many people hear this conversation a lot, and people were saying, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. And all of a sudden, everybody started saying, well, all lives matter. Listen to me carefully. You hear it here for the first time. Some of you may hear it here for the first time. All lives matter. We did not say all lives did not matter, but there's a particular life that is under attack. There's a particular section of our society that are being marginalized, discriminated against, systematically pushed aside, experience slavery, experience colonization, wiped out, destroyed, and it is our Black indigenous people of color. And so when we are being intentional about saying Black Lives Matter, we're trying to say, here are people who are under attack. Here are lives that are being abused and pushed aside and excluded. You can check any data in any organization. They will tell you, yes, there is systematic racism, and these are the issues that have impacted our racialized folks. And so what we're doing is bringing that kind of attention. It's a cry. It's a cry out to say, see me. I am here. Make space for me. Give me the same respect, admiration, access, power that you would give to anyone else. Give me the same value. Give me the same access. And so what we have to do, especially if you are like me, you're Black, you're racialized, you are an ally, you say you're an ally and an advocate, you have to work at disrupting systematic racism. That is your job. Your job is to work with me to disrupt systematic racism, to disrupt systematic barriers, to disrupt deficit thinking in school, to disrupt what we have seen as a marginalization of certain children, to disrupt who is being affected by streaming, to disrupt the idea of how refugees and ESL students are treated in school. Disrupt anti-Black racism in school. That's what we want to talk about. And the tools you already have. You already have tools. You know what the biggest tool is, Salma? You know what the biggest tool we have is ourselves. is ourselves. I ask this question a lot. I always ask when I do my workshop, how many missed opportunities have you had to disrupt racism? How many places you have been where there was an act of racism and you sat quiet and said nothing? You know what I always say, Salma? I always say to people, when you see a bully, I want you all to learn this, especially my high school students. When you see a bully on the playground or outside or wherever a bully is at, I'm curious. I always ask this question, is it easier for you to fight against the bully? Or is it easier sometimes for you to befriend the person who is being bullied? I want you to think about that. A lot of times people focus on the bully. I focus on the person who is being bullied. I focus on those who are disenfranchised and pushed aside and marginalized. And I'm going to tell you something, young ladies, listen to me, because I know we have some high school students. The next time you go on the outside and you see a bully is being rude and nasty and disenfranchised and excluding a particular student, take your privilege and go and sit with that student. Watch the magic that happens. Watch the magic. If I go to a party or I go to somewhere and I see somebody in the corner and I realize this is the person that nobody wants to dance with, this is the person they pushed aside, this is the person who feel like they shouldn't even be here, that's the person I want to dance with. That's the person I want to have a drink with. Instead of wasting my time arguing with the bully. I hope you get that analogy, Salma. The energy we use in working with opportunities that say to those who are disenfranchised, I see you. I want you to ask yourself, what are the ways I could impact people who are different from me, people who are marginalized, people who are being accused because of racism, people who are we know those persons. And how do I bring about change? So that is what I want you to think about as you position yourself in this conversation. Systematic racism is real. I want us to get that. I'm not going to have a debate with anyone about that. I use this picture because I want us to show us how we can be pretentious. We are wondering, I don't know what that is. I think I need another vowel. I'm not so sure. You don't need another vowel. You don't need another vowel. You understand that this is a place where we have racism. We have anti-Black racism. And I know many of us, we have gotten to this language where we say, we're not like America. Canada has its own history of slavery, its own history of racism. We like to talk about Harriet Tubman as if she saved all the Black people from America to come to Canada, as if Canada did not have its own history of slavery. So we love to talk about that. That's why we have to understand and unpack these things. So, not a discussion. I want you to jump in the chat box. Everybody, jump in the chat box for me. And I want you to type for me, how does racism, anti-Black racism impact your community? Just jump in the chat. Let's just read some of those. How does racism, anti-Black racism impact my community? I could show you tons of responses that I've gotten from other persons. Thank you, Ban, for starting us off. Unequal treatment. We have seen a lot happening in COVID. We see the lack of trust. Many people don't understand why Black people was having an issue with vaccination. People have to understand that historically, we have had issues with how Black people have been used as experiment and still happening in spaces as experiment for certain things. We have seen those things happening. Tuskegee Airmen. We have had many, many stories. And so there's a lack of trust. We have seen where it alienates many students in our public school system. We have seen a negative of police presence in neighborhood. Thank you, Diana. Thank the anti-Black racism impact my community for the over-policing. It is real. I can tell you a story. Let me, I use my stories a lot. Let me share a story with you. and I'm gonna stop this for a minute. And thank you. Keep pouring in your questions. I see ban, the segregation. I see the misogynoir. Oh, I see the misogynoir. Anybody don't understand what misogynoir is? Please take that word and Google it and spend some time. Thank you, Asatu. Thank you for that one. We have seen it. I was coming back from Jamaica the other day, and I was selected in the airport to go through second check-in or whatever they want to call it. Now, I want you to listen to me carefully. I don't have a problem with that. I was tired and I want to go home, but I have no problem with second check-in or whatever they want to do. Security, you know, bad people come into the place every day. But what happened, Salma, when I went to the back, what happened was the level and the type of questions I was being asked. The first question I was asked is where I'm coming from. Of course, I'm coming from Jamaica. Where Jamaica? I said, I'm Jamaican, I'm visiting. My mom is home. And I was in my good mood answering. And the questions kept coming in. And he said to me, you know, we want to ask you because you said there's nothing to declare, and that is strange. I said, it is strange that somebody has nothing to declare. I said, I don't find it strange. If I have nothing to declare, I have nothing to declare. And he said, oh, and they went through every single thing. And I asked me what I do. I said, I'm a professor, but this is what I want you to understand. And I talk about this the other day when I talk about Black exceptionalism. I'm going to teach you another term, everybody, for those who don't know it. Black exceptionalism. It's a facade that we buy into that says because you're Black and you're intelligent and you're a PhD and you're financially stable and you have gotten awards and you're this, you're that, you will not go through certain things. That's not true. That is not true. And this is a very good case. When I said who I am, I said I'm a professor at University of Toronto. Whatever. The questions kept coming. And he looked at my jewelry box, which I always wear a lot of jewelry. I wear nice jewelry. And he said to me, why do you have so much jewelry? And I said, because I can afford it. You think they would ask another person that question? You think that's a regular question at the airport? And the questions went on and on until they realized I was very frustrated. And these are the kind of things that they think they can do because there are assumptions and stereotypes and anti-Black racism and systematic racism that says he's a Black man, this is his 4th trip, he must be doing something wrong. This is a Black man, this is his 4th trip, he must be doing something wrong. And I can tell you, they're going to have to ask me more questions the next 2 months because I'm going to Aruba for my vacation. I'm flying first class and I'm going back to the US in April and I'm going back to Jamaica for Easter. So this time they're going to have to ask me 100 more questions because what I will not do is shrink myself. But you have to remember, this is a kind, because I'm sure they're trying to figure out the only way you can travel so much and live this life is because you're doing something wrong. And these are the kind of stereotypes. When people ask about anti-Black racism, if you are not Black, you do not understand the everyday labor that we go through. Coming from a club one night, police pulls me over. And the questioning. And I got maybe one of the most expensive tickets I've ever gotten. But as a Black man in Toronto at 2:30 by myself on Yonge Street, I know arguing with the police was not the right thing to do, was not the safe thing to do. And this is something that many people don't understand because you have seen all the videos of young white men and young white women literally fighting policemen and nothing happens. And nothing happens. Disrespecting policemen, cursing at them. Let one of us try that. Let a Black man try that and see what happens. He will be dead. And I say this for the recording because that's the truth. So I want you to understand the layers. All right? So what I'm going to do at this time is I don't normally would do this for a regular our presentation, but because of it's our class, I'm going to share with you some examples. I want to show you a few examples of how anti-Black racism shows up in our society. And I'm showing you a few of those. Normally when I do workshop, I do not share a lot of these because what I'm not going to do is share certain kinds of narrative. So the mother rejects a school apology. This happened with in Alberta, right? And I want you to understand, I want you to listen, because the school put a ban on do-rag. I want you to understand that there is only one set of students that really wear a do-rag, and they are mostly Black and Hispanic men. So when a school decides, and this is how we have to talk about anti-Black racism when it's systematic, I want you to understand what that means for those who don't know. It's not about you and you calling me the N-word or you somebody doing something crazy out there. We're talking about systems, house buying systems, bank loan systems. Let's get into it. School choice systems, neighborhood systems, school policies and practices, workplace HR system, boards systems that have traditionally, historically, systematically put processes in place that disenfranchise one particular set of people. Their neighborhoods, immigration systems. I don't, Salma, if I get into that right now, it would be baffling for people to understand the kind of countries that have been favorite and given certain privilege because they're coming from whiteness. And when there are issues in other countries where the population is Black, it's a different kind of immigration conversation. That is what we're talking about. I'm sure you have heard all over the news, they said there's something wrong. Listen carefully, wrong with the reporting going on in Ukraine. The reporting, they said there was something wrong. You know what is wrong? Nothing is wrong. People are talking the truth. People are speaking from their heart. And you're hearing the racism coming out. Nothing is wrong. They are speaking their truths. And their truth is racist. And so you're hearing people saying, this is happening to blue-eyed people, white people with blue eyes. This is literally a quote. The man said on the news, I can't believe this is happening to white people with blue eyes. We are not some African country. And that kind of narrative is out there to say, this is who deserve war. This is who deserve poverty. This is who deserve to be called a refugee. This is who deserve to be dispersed and marginalized and pushed aside and walk 100 miles in the cold. These are the people who deserve that. It shouldn't be us who are white with blue eyes. It's all over the news. Google it. Google it. Next one. So in Ottawa, I'm bringing you close to home to show you what's happened. In Ottawa, there was a school board. I'm glad we have high school students with us. So you see what is happening and how the stupidness that people do and what is racist and how we realize you can't do this. So of course, Ottawa student, the school board is investigate a racist prom proposal that refers to Black people picking cotton. You can see how disgusting that is. Happened 2020, not 1958, but 2020. We saw this in Texas when the teen was asked to cut his dreadlocks before graduation. Of course, he has attended the school, and now we are now attacking Black people and their hair again. We see another example, the Indigenous man. This came into 2020 again in the news when an Indigenous man and granddaughter was handcuffed at a Vancouver bank. You can Google these yourself, to read and to unpack. Lawyers release 911 tapes and police report say is evidence of systematic racism. The police report. I have my own story I could tell you. I want you to understand context here. I want you to understand something here. This is one, it's very important. So in 2020, we woke up one morning, if everybody remember, and we saw the number 215. And everybody remember the number 215? Salma, you remember the number 215? It was a number of bodies, graves that found of indigenous children who were murdered. Murdered in what they call residential school, what I call crime scenes. And so people are trying to bring awareness to this atrocity. And then in this particular neighborhood, when people were crying about the debt still hurting from sending their children to class, to school, and they were murdered, and they put up signs on a grill, on the fence that says, remember our children, and there were pictures of indigenous children and graves. Someone decides, let me put up this sign. White lives matter too. So I'm showing you the rawness here. I'm showing you the rawness here right now so you can understand context. You can understand, and by the way, they have found hundreds more graves. So now Canada has faced a dirty truth and dirty secret that many, many children who were sent to school to be taken care of by, especially by Catholic nuns, were murdered. Murdered. And now the number is at 4,118. Thank you, Cynthia. What does that make you feel? Are you moved by empathy? Are you moved by hurt? Are you moved by sadness? Or, like this person here, you center yourself over people's hurt. That's called white privilege. It's called white supremacy. We see the attack. The Pakistan original Muslim family, 4 killed in an attack in Canada. We're talking about racism. I didn't want to do a presentation on anti-Black racism and not also putting racism there. I want us to understand the big umbrella there. It's important. We see this happening in a school. A school. A teacher did this. A teacher did this. A teacher is under investigation for anti-Black racism post. Instead of seeing a child that seems to be hurting, seems to have not been cared for, how do you hug that child, literally, physically, or metaphorically speaking? Instead, you display this on social media. That's why when I speak to teachers, I don't speak to teachers in a very soft, like kumbaya mode, like we are all amazing. Oh my God, we are all amazing. No, we are not all amazing. There are teachers who are racist. There are teachers who are homophobic. There are teachers who are transphobic. There are teachers who are ageist and sexist. There are teachers who are evidence of all these deficit things. Because a teaching position is a very privileged position. We get a good salary. Teaching is a very good profession. Many of our teachers make 6 figures. We're a well-paid profession. Very privileged position to be a teacher. Now, how do you use your power and your privilege to create access? How do you use that power and that privilege to say to people's children, I love you? Can I say something to you young people in my class who are going to be teachers? Can I say something to you? When I do workshops, Salma, and the teacher said to me, Dr. Campbell, we love your workshop. We want to learn how to be anti-racist. Tell us how, help us tell how to be an advocate. One of my biggest thing I say to people, Salma, I said, one of your biggest ways to disrupt anti-Black racism is to love and care for Black children. I'm going to repeat it. One of the biggest action you could do to disrupt anti-Black racism is to love and care for Black children. One of the biggest things you can do to disrupt anti-Black racism is to love and care and respect your Black schoolmates. I hope you're listening to me over there in Miss Cynthia's class. One of the ways you can disrupt anti-Black racism in your school is how you treat your fellow Black students. Don't tell me you're an ally, you're an advocate. Do not tell me that. Show me how you treat somebody else. Show me how you treat othered. Don't tell me you're an LGBTQ ally. Show me how you treat any of your classmates who identify as 2S LGBTQ. Then I know who you are. We see about the handcuffing of the 6-year-old student. That was a big one. I'm sure you have seen that issue. We have seen in Bradford, student face disciplinary action for racist, homophobic Instagram posts. I'm so happy the students are here to see what's going on. It has made the news. Made the news. This one, trigger warning a little bit here. 4 teachers and their principal placed on leave after cheerfully posing with a news in America. Yes, in America. In America. But I want you for a minute to close your eye and picture these same women teaching Black children. You see, this is my issue. You could tell me anything you want to tell me, but what you will not tell me and convince me is that these 4 women right here are treating Black students in their school, in their class, with any love, compassion, and respect. You cannot convince me of that. Because who you are at your core, watch me carefully, who you are at your core impacts what you do. That is why some persons never get on certain teams. Because white women like these in schools who are racist gatekeepers will never select you for the play. I used to teach dancing, and I'm going to tell you this story once. And there was a school I was at, and this particular Indian girl, she's a star. And when I was teaching the school production, she was given the lead role. She was amazing. And I was called to the principal's office because a number of privileged white parents who send their children to ballet said they were surprised that this little Indian girl was given the lead. I want you to understand what racism looks like. And you may say, Dr. Campbell, really, is that racism? Yes, it is. Because what they did, they leave their houses, come to the school to make a complaint, to say to the principal, this child is not deserving because she is not like us. This is a school with 95% white children and us. This is our space. She is an outsider. She is an outsider. How could she be the best? In our book, she could never be the best. She don't go to ballet school. And this is how these kind of conversations, they find themselves within our schools. This is how these conversations find themselves in the actions. We wonder, in the data we have in our school boards, we talk about the disparity of suspension. We talk about the disparity of who is expelled. We talk about the disparity of who gets to be in gifted classes. We talk about the disparity who is placed in certain classes because of streaming. Amen. Streaming is out. We talk about who is policed in school, who is questioned in school. We have had situations where children do their work and their education is questioned because teachers don't have that expectation that they could do it. It operates in a certain way. And that's why we're having this conversation today. Let's move on quickly. And then in Toronto, we saw these nooses. So that was America. In Toronto, anybody remember 2020? We saw the nooses in Toronto start coming up. And we saw in BC that the school board had to apologize for a Slave Day blackface yearbook photo. This happened in 2020 in BC. But guess what? We think we learn our lesson, Salma. We're not going to learn our lesson because there are people who are racist among us. And so in 2020, months after, we had this in St. Mary Catholic School in Pickering, in the Durham Catholic District School Board, when the student tribute to his grandmother was taken and changed into something racist. It was all over the news. We saw in Peel, where the school board trustee made a statement using the comment Mac criminal. And of course, people rush to our defense, rush to their defense. They don't mean this. They don't mean this. But then they realize that comment was just exposing a larger problem of anti-Black racism in the school board. If you follow the news, you know Peel is in a whole conversation right now about anti-Black racism. TDSB, where I'm a part of, their report talk about anti-Black racism involving overwhelming majority of hate incidents. We saw this in California. Everybody saw this, it was all over the news. When a teacher was put on leave for mimicking a Native American dance. We're talking about anti-Black racism in our school. And last of all, we showed you, think we were there. Are we there yet? Are we at the place yet when people realize what they're doing? We see this happening in Parkdale CI, where a teacher was fired. He was refired, finally fired, showing up in blackface. So as we continue this conversation, everybody, we're looking at conversation about how anti-Black racism impact our community. We see them. We see them. I love this quote, and I want to read this. I want everybody to read this. This is coming to us from the Stephen Lewis report. Long ago, 1992. Not new. And it says, first, this is the Stephen Lewis report about anti-Black racism, and this is part of the preamble. You could Google it. You could Google the Stephen Lewis report and Google this and get a copy. And he says, first, what we are dealing with at root and fundamentally is anti-Black racism. He coined the term long ago. It's not new. People think it's new. It's not new. While it is obviously true that every visible minority community experiences the indignities and wounds of systematic discrimination throughout Southern Ontario, it is the Black community which is the focus. It is Blacks who are being shot. This is 1992, Salma. We're not talking about last week. 1992. We're not talking about 2020 when everybody was surprised because of the George Floyd incident. We're talking about 1992 report. And I could give you tons of other information before 1992. Let's continue. It is Blacks who are being shot. It is Black youth that is unemployed in excessive numbers. It is Black students who are being inappropriately streamed in schools. It is Black kids who are disproportionately dropping out. It is housing communities with large concentration of Black residents where the sense of vulnerability and disadvantage is most acute. It is Black employees, professional and non-professional, on whom the doors of upward equity slam shut. Just as the soothing balm of multiculturalism cannot, let me move this, give me a minute, cannot mask racism, so racism cannot mask its prime target. Sorry about that. I should have put on the transcript earlier. I apologize for that, everyone. Totally forgot to put on the transcript earlier. All right. So I want us to understand that as we continue this conversation. So history of anti-Black racism, as I said, it's not new. other racialized groups impacted by systematic discrimination in Ontario. However, Black community vulnerable and acutely disadvantaged. Canada has its long history of slavery. We talk about this already. We have mentioned this already. We have talked about this already, right? We have discussed this. Anti-Black racism is well documented in the education system, and the well-documented issue of higher rates of suspension and expulsion of Black students starts at a very young age. We're talking about the policing of institutions, the appear normal or invisible to the larger white society. Anti-Black, what is anti-Black racism? Make sure you can take pictures of any of my slides. It's racial prejudice, stereotyping, and discrimination, which is directed towards people of African descent and which is rooted in their unique history and experience of enslavement. It is characterized by particularly virulent and pervasive racial stereotypes and reflected in the current social, economic, and political marginalization of African Canadians, manifested in a lack of opportunities, lower socioeconomic status, higher unemployment, significant poverty rates, and overrepresentation in the criminal justice system. All topics, by the way, that many of you are working on for your presentation. All topics, some of these areas. Systematic racism, we talk about that. So a lot of what we see is caught on camera at the top. Sometimes I shake my head, sometimes I cry when I think about certain things caught on camera. Anybody saw the news in New Jersey? Anybody saw the incident in New Jersey where the two students were fighting and the police rushed in and they grabbed the white student and put him to sit down? And they throw the Black student on the ground and both of them pounce on him. It's all over the news. It's all over the news. That is the reflex action of our policemen. Reflex action without thinking. That is the reflex action. Let's give the white child a seat. Let's protect the white child from the Black child. The Black child must be the one who's wrong. Let's throw him on the ground. He has no value. Let's stamp on him. Let's kneel on him. You can Google it. Like I said, anything you say I show you, go Google it. Because I don't have anything private. Google it. And so when we think about racism caught on camera, there's a lot of stuff underneath. So let us do a little quick activity. What are some of the things? Jump in the box, everybody. Last time, many of you shared. Jump in the chat. What are some of those things that we think are under the surface? You hear about police brutality. That's, we see it caught on camera. We see the Starbucks incident on camera. What are some of those things that is under the water? The microaggression, Salma, big one. The interview panels, the organizations, the committees that have lack of representations. The way Black and Indigenous and racialized people are followed in stores. When I go first class on a plane, there's always somebody who believes that I'm mistaken in the wrong seat. That may sound like a funny story, but it's real. The slick comments, Venus, as you call them, we call them microaggressions. We call them cultural unconscious bias. We call them conscious bias. Conscious bias, not unconscious, conscious bias. They're not getting hired for the job. The lack of promotion of Black and racialized folks. We see in organizations sometimes where 50 Black people are working on a certain floor and not one of them is ever promoted. We see it here. We see it here. Right now, there's a lot talking about mental health. There's a lot of concern about how racialized folks and Black folks are treated. We realize there's a lack So there's a big thing for those who don't know. Everybody talking about, oh, there's a lack of Black people in social work, that to be psychotherapists and psychologists. Well, guess who are being given the spaces? You have to ask. In university, we're talking about how do we increase the number of teachers who are racialized. One of my biggest things is, if we don't admit racialized students, are we going to have racialized teachers? Right? So I am talking to university, my university, about the admission. Who is being admitted? We taking 400 students. How many of those are Black? How many of those are racialized? So when we pretend in our powerful roles as university people and policy people that, oh my God, I don't know why this is, you know why it is. It's systematic. If we do not take in and accept and admit more racialized people to be in as teacher candidates, then we're not going to graduate more racialized students. Then we're not going to have more racialized teachers who have been given access. Universities are a very privileged place, you know. Universities are a very privileged space. University is a very privileged space. Very, very privileged space, a university. And there are many spaces where white supremacy has protected who gets in a university. I said it, absolutely. It's there. We have universities who have confessed and apologized that they systematically did not take Black people in their medicine program. So no, yes, we had Black people applying. They were not selected. These are what we call systematic racism. University has apologized for that. More than one. So I want you to think about that. We're going to wrap up. So as we do this, I'm going to leave it to you a few things I want you to do as you think about becoming anti-racist. As you think about doing more work. All of us, I hope you're doing your work. I think you are. I hope you are. To do more work, to be a better ally, to be a better advocate, to be a better activist, to continue to grow and to learn and to grow. Today we talk about awareness to action. On the 22nd, I think we're going to talk about disrupting anti-Black racism from within. So that's our last lecture on this topic here. How do we become more intentional? How do we become more intentional? One of the first things is to do awareness of yourself. We're going to wrap up in 5 minutes. Awareness of yourself. Understand who you are. Understand what makes you different. Understand your power and your privilege. Understand that if you walk to the mall as three girls walk into the mall, I want you to understand that if 2 of you are white and your friend who you love so much is Black, I want you to understand that there are many people in the mall who sees her different from you. I want you to understand if something happens in the mall, she may be treated different from you. High school students, I want you to understand that. I want you to understand how you being white and you having certain privilege impacts you. I want you to understand that. I don't want you to walk away thinking, well, we went to this workshop, we went to this field trip with our teacher, and this Black, gorgeous Black man, that's me, was talking, and he talks about white privilege, and I feel so bad. You don't need to feel bad. You don't need to feel bad. It's your identity. You don't need to feel bad. Own your whiteness. Own your privilege. But here comes the magic. How do you use that to create space? How do you use that to make sure that the student in your class who are racialized know that you genuinely love them and care and respect them? Be deliberate. Thank you, Cynthia. Being deliberate about inclusion. That is the magic. If you forget anything I said tonight, be deliberate about inclusion. I tell you a sad story so you understand. This is not about racism, but I want to share it with you. I want to share it with you, everybody, so you understand. I was at a school. I taught at many schools, so you won't know which school. And I had a child, Cynthia, in my class, who is on the autism spectrum, Cynthia. Who is on the autism spectrum. I'm going to wrap up in about 3 more minutes. And they were having a birthday party, one of the students. And at that school, very, very fancy, they invite, they're having a birthday pool party. And I had 35 children, and they sent 34 birthday invitations. And this child who's on the autism spectrum was not invited. Now, I'm sure somebody said, well, Dr. Campbell, that's their birthday party. They get to decide who they invite. Yes, they do. But what you don't get to do is invite 34 of my students and do not exclude one because he's autistic. You're not going to do that. No, ma'am, Pam. No, ma'am, Pam. So you know I made a deal about it. You know I went to the principal. You know we called the parent. And I said, no, ma'am, Pam. We are not going to do that. I want us to be deliberate about inclusion. I want us to be intentional. The next thing I want you to do is to see aware of others. Aware of others. Have a lens where you see each other. If you have never watched a good movie, I want you to watch Avatar. One of my favorite movies. Go watch Avatar. It tells a story, tells a powerful story about indigenous, powerful story. But there's a part in that movie when the person says, I see you. One of my favorite movies, Salma. I think I've watched it 4 or 5 times. I'm going to watch it again. I'm sure I'm going to snug up with a popcorn and a glass of juice or something and watch it another time again. Powerful movie. I see you. So my high school students listening to me, can you genuinely turn to other people who are different from you, who are othered, and say to them from your heart, I see you. I see your hijab. I see your skin. I see your food. If they're Asian, I see your hair. I see your accent. I see your language. I see your dress. I see your religion. I see your custom. I see your clothes. I see you. Can you say that from your heart? And if you can't, practice that. We all want to be seen, Jacqueline. We all want to be seen. Let us learn how to see each other. Students call for actions. So I'm leaving you with these 5 actions. Understand yourself, understanding of others, continue learning and unlearning, engage in courageous conversation. Tonight, that's what you did. Tonight, you engage in a courageous conversation. I doubt there's going to be many more places where you can hear this kind of presentation. Because they like to water it, add water and stir, sweeten it, sprinkle it, shake it up, icing it. I give it to you just like this, courageous. I want you to think about policies and practice. Some of you are high school, you're in clubs and societies and leadership programs. Ask yourself, who is a part? Who is on the team? Who is being selected? Who is being excluded? Why? Ask yourself. And in that, be a leader, be an ally, and be an advocate. We're going to stop right there for this conversation. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for engaging. And it's a beginning conversation. This is a beginning conversation. This is a 145 minutes conversation, 50 minutes conversation. We have hours and hours to learn and to unlearn. But I think, as Cynthia says, I want to leave that with you all. Be deliberate. Be intentional about inclusion. Be deliberate. Be intentional about inclusion. Be deliberate. Be intentional about inclusion. Remember, inclusion starts with you. Inclusion starts with me. Many of us, we have missed opportunities to be truly anti-racist. Don't miss the next opportunity. Don't miss the next opportunity to speak on someone's behalf, to use your power, your privilege, and your access to intercept a wrong and to make it right. Do not miss the next opportunity to make sure you include people who are othered. Do not miss that opportunity. Thank you so much for listening. It was a pleasure having you, Cynthia, and your group. It was a pleasure having you, Jacqueline. And of course, my own students. You know I love you all. Thank you so much for engaging. Remember to tell your classmates that tonight's lecture is being recorded and it's going to be uploaded to our classroom in the next hour. Okay?